So Microsoft and Activision Blizzard are trying to merge right now, and the British government has blocked the merger in Britain. It says here on BBC News, Microsoft and Activision Blizzard hit out as UK regulator blocks takeover. Says Microsoft's $68.7 billion deal to buy U.S. video game company Activision Blizzard has been blocked in the UK by the Competition and Markets Authority. The proposed takeover would see Microsoft acquire such hit titles as Call of Duty and Candy Crush, but the regulator said it was concerned the deal would offer reduced innovation and less choice for gamers in the fast-growing cloud gaming business. Microsoft and Activision hit out at the decision and said they would appeal. Hit out must be a British term I'm unfamiliar with. The CMA's report contradicts the ambitions of the UK to become an attractive country to build technology businesses, a spokesperson for Activision said. The UK is clearly closed for business. We will work aggressively with Microsoft to reverse this on appeal, they added. The report's conclusions are a disservice to UK citizens who face increasingly dire economic prospects. We will reassess our growth plans for the UK. Global innovators, large and small, will take note that, despite all its rhetoric, the UK is clearly closed for business. CMA's decision rejects a pragmatic path to address competition concerns and discourages technology innovation and investment in the United Kingdom, he said. Microsoft has already signed contracts to make Activision Blizzard games available on 150 million more devices, he added. We're especially disappointed after lengthy deliberations. This decision appears to reflect a flawed understanding of this market and the way the relevant cloud technology actually works. Skip. Whole bunch of Microsoft saying stuff. The future of games, as well as a big financial investment. This deal is important for Microsoft because it wants to strengthen its position in the future gaming market. Speaking before the CMA ruling, Keza McDonald, games editor for The Guardian, explained, the established financial model for a games console is that you buy one, then you buy games to play on it. But what is happening now is that cloud computing and other technologies are creating the opportunity for a kind of Netflix of games where you stream titles rather than owning them. It is something that Microsoft is already heavily invested in. They have their Game Pass service, blah, 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 blah. Microsoft, everybody knows what Game Pass is. Everybody watching this knows what Game Pass is, right? Let's see. But while the technology giant has world-leading hardware to struggle to compete with rivals like Sony and Nintendo when it comes to games themselves. The remedies offered so far by Microsoft try to persuade the CMA is that this deal would not have a negative impact on the future of cloud gaming, have not clearly worked, unlike their arguments around console gaming, which were accepted by the CMA. Microsoft has signed agreements with some of the current key players in cloud gaming, like tech company NVIDIA, but further concessions will be needed if they are to have any hope of reversing this decision. Without an agreement here, the whole process grinds to a halt. There's a sense of shock among the UK games industry at this decision because the general expectation was that it would be approved. Sony bosses, however, will be pleased. They have consistently opposed the deal, arguing its PlayStation would have restricted access to some of the world's most popular titles, which would be bad for gamers. Okay, so, pardon me. What this means is that the UK has blocked the merger in Britain, right? Now, that Britain's not a particularly large market. The United Kingdom is not a huge market for games. It's still a big market, but it's nowhere near like the defining market of video games. That's by far still Japan and the United States, right? And neither of those countries have weighed in on this in any official capacity. There are not lawsuits. There are reviews of the merger happening in both countries, but as far as I've heard or can tell, it's not likely to be struck down in either of those countries. So for the UK, what this means is right now, Microsoft Activision will be appealing this for months to possibly years, depending on how deep they want to go into it, right? And if they fail, and no other countries agree with the UK in this acquisition and allow the acquisition to go through in all the other countries, very likely Microsoft will just pull out of the UK and try to strong arm the country into acquiescing, right? Because again, the UK doesn't hold a huge chunk of the power here. But we will see how it goes in the future. Now, as far as like where I fall on the subject, right? What do I think is the correct path to take here? I think the UK are doing the right thing in this situation. I think that allowing Microsoft to merge with Activision after Microsoft already bought Bethesda, right, is potentially catastrophic in the long term, because there aren't that many AAA publishers left. There just aren't, right? You've got like CD Projekt Red, you've got Sony, you've got Microsoft, there's EA, which everybody knows sucks, there's Activision, which everybody knows sucks, and there's Ubisoft. It's like 5 large publishing companies, and CD Projekt Red is and Rockstar, 6 large publishing companies. And CD Projekt Red is questionable whether or not they're actually considered a large publishing company, right? They've had some massive games, but they're not putting out title after title after title after title like Ubisoft, EA, Sony, Microsoft, Activision, right? And so the market is becoming very consolidated over time, and that's not good. Right now, Sony puts out generally good stuff from their first party studios. That very likely would change if everything consolidated down to being owned just by Sony and just by Microsoft, right? And and then Nintendo's obviously over there doing their own thing, but any games that Nintendo puts out don't really factor into this equation, right? Because Nintendo just doesn't play in the same ballpark as Sony and Microsoft in the PC space and cloud gaming and all that stuff. Nintendo is kind of doing their own thing, which is good, but it just doesn't factor in very much to this. So allowing it to consolidate would ultimately end up being like a bad thing for consumers. Prices would likely go up. Quality would likely come down. Microtransactions would likely become more egregious and more problematic with time. You very likely would see a shift towards away from being able to own your own games, and everything would just be like streaming and you don't actually own anything. It very likely could consolidate the market to the point where you stop being able to like own hardware. Like we're getting into like, it's possible you get into like right to repair laws. And all of that stuff becomes like actual considerations if the market consolidates. And it's well known that EA, which is a absolutely massive publisher, is looking for a merger partner at the moment. And it's clear that Sony is currently coming down on the side of let's not consolidate the market anymore. But if Microsoft gets away with taking over Activision, Sony may just preemptively pull the trigger on EA, and then you've got Battlefield and Star Wars Battlefront, although that game kind of died with time, right? And you'll have Battlefield, and you'll have Apex Legends, and you'll have all the little indie studios that EA publishes games for. And all of that will end up underneath the Sony umbrella, and all of Activision and all of Blizzard and all of Bethesda will be under Microsoft, and the situation may become hostile enough that it just completely separates the markets, right? And I just don't think that this is a good move for us to make. I think the UK is right on this. I don't have hope that the United States will actually block this merger from going through. The United States has a horrible history of blocking over consolidation of the market, right? How many startup social media companies did the US government let Facebook buy? Like just one after another after another after another. Instagram, is a good example. Instagram's owned by Facebook. They bought shoot, I can't think of who. They bought the Quest, the VR, right? I forget the company that had the Quest before, but they bought the Quest, the company that had the Quest, right? And they bought all kinds of AI companies on the back. They bought out a couple of social media companies that were starting up in other countries that, for the life of me, I can't remember their names. And like the U.S. government just let all this happen. It just didn't even bat an eyelash at it, right? Same thing with the cell phone market. We're now down to 3 large carriers. We have T-Mobile, we have AT&T, and we have Verizon, and every other carrier is either running on those networks or is extremely local, right? And the United States let that happen. There used to be a bunch of carriers in the U.S. Cell phone carriers, they all consolidated, right? And the United States government just let that happen. So I don't have high hopes that the U.S. government will, come down on the right end of this. And very likely it will mean that the UK will eventually have to acquiesce and cave to the merger.